Hi guys, good morning. We are missing you so much. So this week we decided that we're going to connect with you a little bit in a different way. If you haven't guessed where I am right now, I'm actually at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And today starting today, we're going to be doing a read aloud about the Declaration of Independence. This is actually one of the books in the What Is series. It goes along with the Who Is series too, which I know you guys love. We're going to be talking about what is the Declaration of Independence. I know we talked a lot about colonial times before our school kind of got cut short here. So let's continue to read about the Declaration of Independence and see where we can go from there. All right, so today we're just going to be reading the introduction in chapter 1. And then every day I will post another chapter, me reading another chapter, and then some questions to go along with it. All right, let's get started. So what is the Declaration of Independence? The June heat in Philadelphia was blistering. Even before the sun came up, it was hot. Thomas Jefferson of Virginia did his best to stay cool as he wrote in the room he had rented on Market Street. He was writing a letter, but it was no ordinary letter. Along with Jefferson, important men from all 13 American colonies had come to Philadelphia. They planned to do something brave and dangerous. The colonies were declaring their freedom from Great Britain. They were going to create a new country, the United States of America. So why do you think 13 important men are the only people that came together to write this declaration? Thomas Jefferson was chosen to write a public letter to the British king listing all the reasons why people in America were rebelling. Jefferson also wanted the letter to show other countries in Europe why this was the right decision for America. It took Jefferson, with help of others, not only a couple of weeks to finish one of the most important documents in history, the Declaration of Independence. Sending an announcement like this, a declaration, meant that colonists in America could go to war. So they actually give you a context clue here about what declaration actually means. It means to send an announcement. The British Army was large and powerful. The colonists did not even have an army. The chances were slim that the Americans could win. Many would certainly die. And even by some chance the colonists did win their freedom, could 13 different colonies create a whole country together? For 2 weeks, Jefferson worked on the Declaration of Independence. He sat at the small desk that he had made by hand. He wrote in ink on large sheets of paper with his quill pen. Each day, Jefferson would discuss the ideas for the Declaration with some of the other men who gathered in Philadelphia. So looking back, here is actually a picture of Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, and they're working together to come up with these ideas. But why might they have been a little hesitant in writing the Declaration of Independence? They knew that this was the right thing to do. They knew that they had to write it to get their freedom. But what were some of the reasons that they discussed that they might have been a little bit hesitant? So after these talks, Jefferson would sometimes tear up his most recent drafts of the Declaration and start over. He wanted to get every word just right. The Declaration had to explain more than why the colonies would no longer live under British rule. More importantly, it had to tell the world what this new country hoped to stand for. It would not have a king. It would set up a government in which ordinary men decided the laws. After the Declaration of Independence was finished, it was signed on July 4th, 1776. It had become one of the most important statements of freedom. It had inspired people around the globe to fight for their freedoms as well. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." This meant that new United States would treat everyone the same. Jefferson may not have realized how powerful those simple words would be for hundreds of years to come. So we just talked about Abraham Lincoln and some of the ideas that Abraham Lincoln fought for. So let's go back, and we're actually going to read a little snippet here about what was actually decided, because it says in the Declaration that all men were created equal. It didn't say anything about the color of your skin or where you are from. All it says is that all men were created equal. And on this next page here, we're actually going to learn a little bit more about why it wasn't directly stated that African-American slaves were created equal. Okay, so Jefferson's famous phrase about all men being created equal didn't hold true in the American colonies. In 1776, there was about 500,000 African slaves that were brought over from Africa, belonging to the white colonists. Jefferson himself owned slaves. So did many of the other men who signed the Declaration of Independence. His first version of the Declaration, Jefferson included anti-slavery language. But too many of the signers did not want to end slavery, so there was no mention of it. Jefferson did free a few of his slaves, and so did many of the other men who signed the Declaration. So why do you think some of these men did not want to get rid of their personal slaves that they had? Okay. So that is the end of the introduction. So that just gives us a little snippet about what is to come. Now we're going to move on and we're going to read chapter 1. After Columbus set foot in the New World in 1492, many European countries wanted to rule different parts of North America. Great Britain, France, and Spain controlled almost the entire continent. Great Britain had 13 colonies along the east coast where most settlers lived. France, Great Britain's rival, had the largest area of land, north and west of the colonies, but not many settlers lived there. Same with Spain, it had a bigger chunk of land than Great Britain, but with far fewer people. So I'm going to show you the map now that goes along with it. I'm going to kind of put it at an angle so you can see it a little bit better. So the dark, almost black color, that is everything that was controlled by Great Britain. And then the vertical stripes, everything there was controlled by France. And the polka dots down here, which is like Florida and then the Texas area, those are the areas controlled by Spain. So in 1754, Great Britain tried to grab more of North America by invading lands controlled by the French. This led to a war known as the French and Indian War. So tell me, what was this war? Why did this war even happen? What were they fighting for? Okay. So a young lieutenant colonel named George Washington served in the British Army, fighting against the French. So we know that George Washington was our first president here, and we also know that he actually served in the war. He helped fight against the French, and he also helped in the American Revolution, which we'll continue to read about. So most American colonists wanted Great Britain to win the war with France, and after many years, it did. Great Britain doubled the area of land it controlled. So I'm going to show you this little map right here. Let's see. Okay, so in the beginning, it controlled this area here, that dark black color is Great Britain. Sorry, it keeps glitching out on us. And then over here now you can see how much land they really did own. So again, the stripes, that like grayish color there, that's everything controlled by France. And now you can see that anything controlled by Great Britain, they completely took over. So during the war, many British soldiers were sent to America to fight. That had been very costly. King George III had to borrow massive amounts of money from other countries. After winning the war, King George III had to pay back what he owed. In the king's mind, he had been defending the American colonies against the French. So I'm not even going to continue to read there. What do you think that King George III did? He borrowed so much money from other colonies. He had to pay them back. So now, what do you think King George is going to do since he owned those American colonies? What do you think he's going to do to try to get some money? So he expected the colonies to help with the war debt. This angered people in America. It wasn't the colonists' idea to start the war. It had been fought because the king wanted more land. So why should Americans have to pay? So here is actually a picture of King George III. Sorry, it's getting a little glitchy on me again. There you go. So you can see he's in these very fancy clothes. He's kind of got some jewels around him. He's got this big glamorous crown. And do you think that the rest of Great Britain and the colonies, did they have clothing that looked like that? Okay, so let's continue to read, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about George Washington, who was a British soldier. So King George III didn't listen to that argument. He didn't care what the American colonies had to say. The British government called Parliament taxed the American colonists heavily to pay for the war debts. The American colonists had no one representing them in Parliament. It meant that London, more than 3,000 miles away across the Atlantic Ocean, so very far away, they were making decisions for them. The colonists had no way to argue against the high taxes. So this is the state Stephen's Chapel where Parliament actually met. So they used to meet in like these big churches together, and they would talk. Did Parliament decide on all the laws governing the colonies? No, there were local governments with men elected by their fellow colonists. In Virginia, for example, there was a House of Burgess. However, none of these groups had much power. In each colony, a royal governor made all of the important decisions. Whatever the governor decided to be the law was the law. There was no arguments. Do you think that that's fair? And he was appointed by the king. So Great Britain always had the final say about all the laws and taxes. This got people in the colonies angry, very, very angry. So make a prediction here. What do you think they're going to do next? All right, let's go back and let's read about George Washington. Here's the House of Burgess. So it's kind of like just this big meeting room that they went and they met in. And then here is a picture of George Washington. Okay, so George Washington, a British soldier. The son of a successful Virginia farmer, George Washington was only 22 years old when he led 150 British soldiers against French troops along the Ohio River. This was at the very beginning of the French and Indian War. His troops were defeated by the French army, and Washington had to surrender. He was ashamed. A year later, Washington returned to the same area to fight, and once again the French overpowered his forces. Washington had 2 horses shot from underneath him. The best he could do was lead the defeated British soldiers back to safety. Although praised for his bravery in the war, Washington retired from the British Army in 1758. He returned to his farm in Virginia. However, 17 years later, British became commander and the chief of the Continental Army, where he was now fighting against Great Britain. So at first he fought in the French and Indian War. And what happened to him in the French and Indian War? And then how do you think he felt about the British after that? Because we know at the end, then he was fighting against Great Britain. So he was following along with the colonies. All right, guys, thanks so much. And I will see you tomorrow at around the same time. All right, have a great day.